Good morning, folks, or afternoon. This is Aaron DeBruin, Vinyl Freak 89, here once again to give you a video update on the situation for March 25th, 2008. Well, things really didn't work out as planned, and my concern that this thing was going to be too far suppressed to the southeast has come to fruition. Um, it's unfortunate to see mono performance be this bad, but things happen, and I think we should just move on and look at the next system. We're going to analyze that a little bit, and we're going to go and look through the rest of March and into early April. So this is just like a late March sort of video thing. First off, I wanted to take a look at the Clipper and what's going on with it. And the one major thing that I can note is that I was too far south with everything accumulation wise. Shift this whole thing north about 150 miles and this becomes a really good forecast, at least to this point. I still don't know what's going to go on east of this line at this point, and we'll still have to see as the day goes on. And as we get into the day tomorrow, and a full verification will be out on that. But if right now I had to put a preliminary grade on this, I'd give it a B minus since it was a pretty good forecast, but just 150 miles or so too far to the south. Um, Alright, so let's get right down to it with the 72-hour Euro. Here's our storm going off the coast and heading off into the ether onto the northeast, affecting the fishes and giving them snow. Notice we have a flat wave in here and not a sharp trough, and that's pretty much why we're not getting snow. Notice also the negative NAO is pretty much dissipated, although it will come back later in the month, and we're going to go over that in just a second. So we move on to 84 hours, and here we can see the storm exiting off to the northeast. There is no precipitation with this thing. It is so close to being a big storm. If this short wave would just wait a little bit to phase, then we might have a bigger storm. But that's probably not going to happen. I've pretty much given up on this one. So we're done with this storm. 96, you can see again it's still moving off to the northeast. Here comes the remnants of the Omega block, which is sitting up here. Here's our east base negative NAO way off to the north, to the east. High pressure settling in for Tuesday, so it's going to be pretty cold along the east coast. Here comes our next storm to the north, and here comes the next feature that I'm a little concerned about coming across into the Pacific Northwest. Moving on to 108, this is Wednesday at 0Z. Here's the first storm going across the north. Here's the next one developing across the south. This one's going to head for the lakes, be a Great Lakes cutter. But what's coming behind it could be a little more interesting, and we're going to continue to take a look at that. So now what we're seeing is once we move on to 120 hours to Wednesday at 12Z, ooh, this looks a little interesting. Well, it's going to cut for the Great Lakes. You can see high pressure sitting along the coast. There is no negative NAO, it is positive. Here comes, though, it's actually our storm that's going up and is going to form another sort of a vortex, polar vortex in Canada, which could allow another negative NAO to build. And we're going to take a look at that. And once we get toward the end of the month. Moving to 132, we can see here comes the storm continuing to develop. Here's that hint of that polar vortex starting, and you can see there's a little bit of ridging sitting in here, maybe indicative of blocking that wants to try to set up again. Here comes once again the next storm coming in, and you can see we have this slide coming across the Pacific Northwest. Still, though, we have a pretty good Omega setup in here. It's breaking down a little bit, but it's not terrible, and we still have ridging sitting in that region. Going to 144, here we can see the storm getting strung out. Nice overrunning event in the Great Lakes, not too big a deal, I don't think. I agree with the negative NAO, but here we can see, I agree with the Euro, but here we can see the ridge starting to stick its nose back for the negative NAO. This is March 27th at 0Z. Here comes the next storm, and this is the one that I'm concerned about, and I think that the Euro may be a little bit too far to the north with it. We'll see, and I'm going to try to show you why. Moving on to 156. Here comes the first storm, here comes the next one. And again, it's got a lot of energy up here to the north, but here's the beginnings of a negative NAO. Here's the polar vortex further back to the west. This whole thing is a lot further to the west than we saw with our last system, and that definitely That definitely is a good sign. So if we can see this to be a little bit weaker in here and a little bit further to the south, more energy in the southern branch, which I don't see to be too bad of a correction from almost 6 days out, this could be a little bit more interesting storm as we go on through time. Here we can see continuing to see that block building up toward Greenland by March 28th at 12Z. And here's the storm getting ready. It's going to be another lakes cutter this run, but it really would not take too much to get this thing to shift south and off the east coast. The reason why this is a lakes cutter is because the big energy with this system is situated to the north, and it's a Miller B feature, not a Miller A. You can see a little bit of a trough sticking down, and here comes the next one down the pike, which could now is starting to pique my interest a little bit as well. So even if we don't get the one for toward the end of March, there may be something coming around in early April. So let's continue to look out. Here's 180. Can see here it goes cut into the lakes, but there's a lot of energy hanging around the southern branch. This weak at negative NAO is not going anywhere. You can see the blocks trying to form up here. What looks to be a 50-50 low trying to form off the coast of Maine, and so we'll continue to look on. Notice southeast ridge is pretty suppressed and pretty far off to the east at this time. Going to 192. Here it comes blowing up in the lakes. Again, I really don't see too much and you can see here's really the indications of a block trying to form 50-50 low. It really would not take too much to shift this thing 500 miles to the south at 8 days out. So we'll see. This does look a lot like what the Euro showed for our current storm. We'll see. I'm not gung-ho on it yet, but I'm still watching it as a possibility. So this is March 29th. Watch towards the end of March. It's definitely, certainly a possibility for us to see another threat coming up. 204. Here we can see it's going off to the northeast. Starting to see it builds a ridge in here. Still the block sitting up here, which is getting squashed. Here comes the next one down the pike, but a lot of energy sitting in the southwest. We have a split flow. This is definitely prime. I'd say by at least April 5th. Before we're going to start to see this pattern change. So we have a couple chances coming up toward the end of winter before we get into through to fully to the end of the winter. Again, we can see another storm developing pretty far to the north. Here comes what looks to be another block trying to form. Again, these blocks are weak and transient, high pressure situated across the midsection of the nation, and we have yet another storm coming down the pike. Moving on to 228. Here we can see here this storm. Again, this one's got a little bit more energy sitting to the south. Here comes the block again trying to form. You can see the Euro really does want to try to form a block. A good west-based negative NAO this time, not an east-based. And that may have a little bit of an impact to our next system. You can see the Omega block trying to go up here in western Canada, ridge along the west coast. So, okay, things don't look too bad. And then we move on to 240, and we can see here's this storm winding up in here. But what's this? Low pressure in the Gulf, high pressure situated across the southeast Canada, and sort of a broken down polar vortex in here with a little bit of ridging extending over the top. So overall, what are we seeing? Nothing too significant, but certainly something we need to keep our eye on over the next couple of days. I'd say definitely give it till April 5th before we call this winter quits for good. Alright, this is Aaron DeBruin, Final Freak 89. Probably not going to be another video update for another 2 or 3 days until we can see this next storm coming more into line. Of course, if something drastic does happen with our current storm, then of course I will issue a video update, but I'm not planning on it at this point. So, you know, we'll just have to keep an eye on things. So 2 or 3 days once we can start to see modeling getting a little bit further into line. GFS is all over the place, which is why I didn't use it for this run. So we'll wait until it gets into without 5 days, within 5 days or so, and then we'll start to take a look at it. Once again, this is Aaron DeBruin, Final Freak 89 for EasternUSWeather.com. You folks have a great afternoon and enjoy the beginning of spring.